The clash of steel, the roar of thousands, dust rising in clouds thick enough to choke the lungs. Imagine standing shoulder to shoulder in a Roman legion, shields locked, spears bristling, the enemy screaming across the plain. In that deafening storm of chaos, one question matters. How do you know when to advance, when to halt, when to strike? You cannot hear the commander's voice. Orders vanish in the roar of combat. Yet the legions moved as one, disciplined, precise, unstoppable. The answer did not lie in sight or in speech, but in sound. Deep, thunderous, unrelenting sound. Rome's armies marched not only with sword and shield, but with rhythm. The tuba, the cornu, the clang of cymbals, and the steady thunder of drums guided the empire's armies across continents. The beat of war was the invisible hand that bound thousands into one living organism. But how powerful was this weapon? Could mere sound command empires and win wars? Rome did not invent the drum of war. Sound in battle has ancient roots.
In Mesopotamia, clay reliefs show soldiers advancing to the rhythm of drums. In Greece, the Spartans marched to the pipes of the aulos. Yet Rome, true to its genius, absorbed these traditions and perfected them. By the 4th century BCE, as the Republic expanded across Italy, Roman armies were already accompanied by musicians. Their role was not entertainment, it was survival. From dawn to dusk, camps were ruled by signals. The blast of the buccina announced the changing of guards. The tuba marked the start of the march, and the cornu, the great curved horn, echoed across valleys to shift formations. These sounds were not random noise, they were coded language. Every note carried meaning, a call to advance, a call to retreat, a warning of ambush. In a world without radios or modern communications, the Roman army created a symphony of discipline, a living score played on the battlefield. The setting of its birth was crucial. Rome was not yet the world's master, but a growing power facing enemies on all sides. Etruscans to the north, Samnites in the hills, Carthage across the sea. To survive, Rome needed order, and sound provided it. As the legions grew, so too did the orchestra of war. By the Punic Wars against Carthage, Roman battlefields thundered with commands carried by sound.
Imagine Hannibal's cavalry crashing into the Roman line. Amid the dust, a Roman centurion raises his hand, but no one sees. Instead, the booming blast of the cornu cuts through the chaos, signaling reserves to wheel around and plug the gap. One historian, Polybius, wrote of the Roman reliance on music, noting how trumpets and horns coordinated movements on vast battlefields. The legions were like a machine, each cog turning in time with the beat. Sound was not only tactical, it was psychological. The steady drumbeat during a march could crush fear, replacing it with rhythm and unity. Soldiers became part of something larger than themselves, their own hearts sinking to the pulse of Rome. To the enemy, the sound was terrifying. Imagine standing in a tribal warband, hearing the deep boom of drums, the harsh call of brass echoing from beyond the hills. Before you even see the legion, you hear it. Order, discipline, inevitability. The sound alone carried Rome's reputation. One story from Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul tells of Gallic tribes unnerved by the sheer noise of the Roman advance, horns blaring, drums pounding, the ground shaking beneath iron hobnailed sandals. Even before swords were drawn, morale was already broken. The height of Roman sound warfare came during the Empire, when armies marched from Britannia to Mesopotamia. Each legion carried its own band of musicians, known as ayanatores and tubicines. They stood on high ground or behind the front line, ensuring their signals carried across fields of blood and fire.
The instruments themselves were marvels of design. The cornu, shaped in a great curve around the body, could blast across valleys. The tuba, a straight bronze trumpet, cut through noise with piercing clarity. The tympanum, a form of drum adapted from the East, provided rhythm for coordinated marches. Together, they created a soundscape that was both functional and fearsome. And in Rome itself, sound carried political weight. Triumphs, the grand processions of victorious generals, resounded with drums and horns. Citizens lined the streets not only to see the spoils of war, but to feel the vibrations of power in their chests. The music was propaganda, the audible proof of Rome's might. At its peak, the sound of Rome's armies was like the heartbeat of empire. To march with the legions was to march inside a living, breathing rhythm. To fight them was to drown in it. Yet, like all things, the drum of war faded. By the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, Rome's enemies had adapted. Germanic tribes learned to use horns of their own, creating sonic duels across battlefields. What was once Rome's advantage became common practice. Meanwhile, the empire itself fractured. Armies grew less disciplined, more reliant on mercenaries. The old rhythms faltered. Without the iron discipline of the Republic and early empire, the music lost its meaning. The cornu fell silent, the tuba lay rusting, and the legions no longer moved as one body, but as fragments of a crumbling machine. By the time the Western Empire fell in 476 CE, the sound of Rome had become an echo. The once unifying rhythm of drums and horns was replaced by the chaos of fractured kingdoms.
And yet Rome's drum of war never truly disappeared. Its echoes beat through history. Medieval armies carried trumpeters to relay commands. Ottoman janissaries marched to terrifying percussion, shaking Europe with their thunder. Even today, military parades across the world keep the tradition alive. Bands, drummers, and brass echoing the ancient Roman practice. Think of the modern marching band, the snare drum keeping time as soldiers step in perfect unison. The origin lies in Rome. Think of the whistle on a battlefield, the bugle call at dawn, the thunder of artillery salvos used not just to kill, but to terrify. Rome laid the foundation. Even in popular culture, Rome's sound still stirs us. Films like Gladiator use drums to underscore tension. Stadiums thunder with rhythmic clapping, a modern echo of soldiers finding courage in the beat. The rhythm that once held together an empire now holds together crowds, armies, even nations. So the question remains, Was Rome's greatest weapon the sword or the sound that guided it? The story of Rome's drum of war is not only about music, it is about control. In chaos, Rome found order. In noise, Rome created language. Through sound, the greatest empire of the ancient world conquered not only land, but the minds of men. The empire has fallen, but its rhythm still beats in our world today. The sound of Rome was not lost, it became part of the human story. If you found this hidden chapter of history as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into the shadows of the past. Because history is not just written in stone, it is heard in echoes. And Rome's echoes still thunder across time.